Hey, guess what? The worst is over. You've now completed your starter, and as long as you keep feeding it and refreshing it, it'll go on as long as you can. Every week or so, grab off a chunk, make new bread, or if you're too busy and not getting around to it, just remember to feed it a little bit. Like we said earlier, just add a little water or milk, a little flour, generally in a 1-to-1 ratio, cup of milk, cup of flour, stir it up, back in the fridge it goes, and it'll just keep going. That's your starter. We've got our starter here in this little ceramic jug we put away. Now we're going to use that starter to make the sourdough bread. Take the lid off when you first get yours and smell. It'll actually smell like beer is brewing. It's really quite something else the first time you open it up. Mix it up a little bit. This is still a little cold out of the refrigerator. Let it get a little bit to room temperature though. This has been out about a half hour now, so it's nice and workable. Take about a cup of that starter. It'll be doughy, but it won't be like bread dough. It'll be quite a bit damp, and as you can see, runny. And we want about a cup of it. And using the spatula is probably not the quickest way to do it, but it works just fine. Just keep grabbing that starter and get it in that cup. There we go. Put that in there. Get the cover back on our starter. And then get your starter in the bowl. Remember, not a metal bowl. We want to make sure we have a glass, wooden, or a plastic one. As I said, I'm not totally sure of the reason, just heard that and I keep doing it just to make sure. To your starter, which you've got in your bowl, add about 2.5 cups of all-purpose flour. It's best really just use unbleached flour. The bleaching just takes all of the nutrients out of it, so I use all-purpose or unbleached flour for everything. I never buy bleached flour. You will not regret it. Dump that in there. Add 2 cups of warm water, around 100 degrees or so. I just put it in here, microwave it up, and it's all set. Add it to your bowl, and then just mix it up. Make sure the flour and the water is all mixed together like a typical flour would be. Get all the lumps out, make it as smooth as you can, and after a while you'll come into a nice smooth consistency. At this point, like before, we just cover our bowl with a nice towel and put it somewhere out of the way. Okay, it's about 8 hours later now. I actually leave mine overnight. If you probably noticed the previous scenes, we were all dark in the back. But here it is the next morning, about 8 hours roughly, and our dough here, mixture, is all nice and foamy. So what we got to do now to come up with our real dough that we can finally start baking today. I hate all this wait, but believe me, it's really worth it. Now, to the mixture that we set aside last night, we're going to add 3 3/4 cups flour, again unbleached, and you can dump it in there all at once. And we want about 3 tablespoons of sugar and a teaspoon of salt. I once left the salt out and everything worked fine. I thought, hey, this isn't so bad, until I tasted the flour. Excuse me, good old clock's going off. And then when I went to eat it, it just really tasted flat. So don't forget your salt. I did it once and it just is not worth it. And then we want to do another final 3 tablespoons of oil. Canola oils, whatever your favorite vegetable oil is. You can use virgin olive oil if you like. I don't really need to, because it's not really an Italian type of a flavor you want. So I like to use a neutral flavored oil, canola oil, corn oil, something like that. And then just mix it all together. Now is when the work comes in. We want to mix it till all of the flour is incorporated into the mixture. And now that we've got it all mixed together, basically like a dough you've probably seen for bread dough, we want to flour our workspace here. So let me get this out of the way. We're going to just grab some flour, and pretty heavily, because this is some gooey stuff, scattered over your work surface. And you can probably want some on your hands too, because this will stick. And then dump your bowl right out onto your work surface. Get all of your dough off your spoon. And this is the part, I guess some people don't particularly care for it, but I really enjoy the kneading part. It's very therapeutic for me. Just work it in. You don't have to beat it, just kind of stretch it with your fingers. And we just keep kneading it until it gets nice and soft. It's about there now. At that point in time, we just roll this up. We should get about 2 loaves out of this, making it what we call a boule style little round ball. So just roll it, roll your dough around. At this point in time, seeing lines or creases isn't that critical. And we're going to put it in a bowl that I previously greased with some Crisco and let it sit to rise. Let me go grab the bowl. And we're going to roll our dough into a nice little ball. And you'll find this is kind of nice. It's heavy. It smells great. Put it into your pan, roll it around, make sure you get some of that oil on it so it doesn't stick. And then put it in there. And we're going to cover this and set it aside for anywhere from an hour to an hour and a half. And then we'll be back and finish the rest of it. Okay, after our bread is risen for about an hour, hour and a half, biggest thing to look for is to see if it's doubled in size. You can see ours has done more than that. The fun part is punching down, aptly named. Push and let all the air out. And see how it kind of shrivels up? And if it keeps that hole in there, it just sort of tells you it's ready. Punch this all down like this. And then we kind of roll it out onto a cookie sheet that's been pre-greased, and just get it into a nice big ball, about like that. We want to break this into 2 balls of dough for our bread, but you don't want to just pull it apart. So use a little pastry cutter like this to kind of break the bread in 2. And then we want to roll each one of these into a round little ball of its own. Kind of pull it around, let it get like that, and kind of set it down into sort of a rounded, flat top little bread roll, just like you've seen in the bakery, except you're doing it now. Same thing with the other one. And we're going to put this in the other corner. And we're going to let this sit and rise roughly half hour, just till it gets a little bigger. One final point, what we want to do to really set this off is take a nice slicing knife, just give it a couple slits. It's more artistic than anything, so whatever looks good to you. The pattern isn't really that critical, because I didn't cut that one that good. There we go. And we're going to set this aside. Now you can either just cover it and set it in a warm area like before, or what I generally do is I just put it right in the oven, no breeze, no wind. It's going to rise really nice. So let's go set this in the oven. In another half hour, we'll be ready to bake. Okay, while our oven is heating up to 375, get a bowl of some nice cold water. I just get throw some ice cubes in it so it's really cold, and brush it over the surface of your bread. This helps give it a nice crust as it bakes. And don't be afraid, it'll roll off. just give it a nice, and then about midway through the baking time, you want to give it some more of this ice water. That'll give it a nice solid crust, which is really a good indication of most of the sourdoughs. There you go. And we're ready to go to the oven. And as soon as our oven hits 375, we take our cookie sheet with our bread loaves and slide them into the center of the rack for about 35-45 minutes, and we want to brush them occasionally with cold water too. And if they stick a little bit, what I sometimes do is just a little spatula or something, they should break loose and slide right off onto your cooling rack. From here, we'll let them sit for about an hour to cool. And you can tell it already. They'll thunk really nice. That's a good sign. Smells like that. Let them cool. And you have your sourdough. Well, congratulations. You've successfully made it through the hardest part of making sourdough, or any bread really. And that's the wait for it to cool. If not yourself, you may have a spouse or kids or something, but the hardest part is keeping them awake until it cools and gives you that unbelievably first bite of that bread you've worked so hard for. So hopefully this has helped you a little bit and given you motivation to try something new. Look at it as two things. Make the starter first, get it in there refrigerated, and then when you are ready to make the go for the whole thing, pull it out, make the bread, and go for it. Right now, I got to get back and try some of this great sourdough. Hopefully it helps. Let me know. Talk to you next week.